Hello friends, and welcome to this journey to excellence. So today's topic, what we are going to talk about in the series of adding power to Excel, that is the one of the series which is there for your professional development and journey to excellence. What we are going to talk about today is nesting functions. That's a concept in Excel which is a very useful concept which can be used in lot of areas and make our Excel sheets or make our data or make the manipulation or generating data much more faster or much more faster and better. So let's see what we are going to look at today. Is in this video, what we are going to talk about is, first we'll understand what the concept is all about. We talk about nesting functions. That is basically a concept where we are giving a function inside another function. We are wanting to use one function inside another function so that instead of generating unnecessary columns and then getting our final output, we can get the final output in one shot itself. So we'll see how to implement this concept and how to implement nesting of functions, and then in real life applications, how do we use it. Most of the time what happens is, when we understand these things, we don't understand in real time scenarios in our professional life, in our academic life, or where do I apply this concept. And the whole endeavor of this channel is whatever concepts would be explained in any domain, be it IT, be it Excel, be it your professional development as self-management. It's not only the theoretical concept, it's also what we look at is what would be explained, what would be there is how do you apply all these things in your real-time case. So let's get the ball rolling, and we'll take this case in a very simple, with a very simple example. So I'll open up my Excel sheet and we'll start working on that Excel sheet and see how we are doing it. So let's build up a scenario here. So what we are going to do is, for some reason we require to generate some information from existing information. Now I'll just tell you what we are looking for. What I want is, we want to generate a special code which is something like this: SD-PKG0001. Now let's try to understand this, how this code has been generated. SD are basically two alphabets which are the prefix of the size column, the values in the cells in the size column, in the rows in the size column, and D is a prefix for domestic or the destination column, sorry. So whatever the cells are there in your destination column, the prefix of that is there in the column H, that is the prefix for destination. What we are finally doing is, we want an output where we want to combine these two alphabets, that is the prefix of the size, the prefix of the destination, and then put a hyphen symbol and get the code after that. We'll look at the scenarios where we can use it, or I will give you examples of the real-time cases, and in future videos we will use this a lot so that we can relate to this particular concept. So how do we go about doing it? So let us do it first step by step. Now sorry, I did not explain you where PKG001 is coming from, the code column, if I mentioned it earlier. Now what we are going to do is, from the earlier video on formulas and functions, we had talked about a function, how to understand functions and the parameters of those functions. So here straight away I am going to tell you which function we are going to use. So we know the process, how do we understand a function. So in this case I want the first alphabet of the size column. So we are going to use a function which is there, that is what we call it as a left function. So we'll go to formulas, which comes into the category of text category. We go to left, we choose the string as the size, we go to number of characters, let's keep it 1, by default it is always 1. We copy it, very simple, plain and simple. We get the first alphabets from the size column. Great. Now what we do is, we go again to the H column, This is the second step what I am doing. Just observe. I go to the text, again take left, choose the destination column, put number 1, click on OK and copy it. So I get the first alphabet of the destination column. Good. Now is the tricky part. What I want is, I want SD-PKG0001. So we had discussed a function called as a concatenate function in the previous in earlier videos. So I use the concatenate function, and the first thing what I want is S. So S is coming from the prefix of the size column, that is cell G3. Text 2 is the destination, so I pick up destination from there, that is in your column H, and text 3 is a fixed value, so I put a hyphen there, and text 4 is nothing but the code, and we click on OK. Do we get this? We get this value, and I'll just show you the formula which has got created here. So we have function which we have used concatenate, and we are saying G3 H3 hyphen is a fixed value and B3. Good way. But then if you look at it, we already have generated 2 additional columns in our worksheet. That is one thing which I am just pointing out here. The first thing which I am pointing out is there are 2 additional columns which have got generated here, which in a way are not adding any value to the whole data besides just generating this code. Otherwise they don't have any other value. Other thing is, we had to do the whole thing in 1, 2 and 3 steps. So first we had to write left in one column, then left in another column, and then we had to use a concatenate function to get the final result. So the final result comes like this. So let's look at a scenario where we can do the whole thing in one step and without generating additional data in my sheet, that is without generating additional columns, because additional column means additional data means additional size of your file and unnecessary increase in the size of the file. So what we are going to do is, first I am going to do the whole thing in first step. So the process what I follow, or the process what you should follow, is first look at, maybe for the first row you can do it as a test, you do the whole thing and then look at the final output. Now what is the final output we have is a concatenate function. So what I will go ahead and do is, in column where I want to generate this value, I will type concatenate. I'm not writing it as a function as of now, I'm just explaining you first. Concatenate. Now concatenate, what was the first parameter we gave when we were writing it in column I? We gave G3. And what was the function in G3? So I'll just do one thing, I will open up this function, I will just show all the formulas here. Now if you see, G3 had left D3 which was there. So what I will do is, I will say fine, I was taking G3 here, so instead of taking G3 I will type the function which is there, left and what were the parameters for the left there? D3 comma 1. So I will just write it as a normal function here, I will type it as left D3 comma 1, close the bracket. Now this bracket is the closing bracket for the left function. I will explain you the sequence how it works. Then the second parameter what we had given here was a H3, and what was there in H3 is again left 3 comma 1, left E3 comma 1. So I will give that function here, left, open the bracket, left E3 comma 1, close the bracket. Then we have already seen that hyphen is a fixed value, so we will just simply put a hyphen symbol, and the last value is as such a fixed cell address B3, and B3, is there any function or is there any calculation? No. Is there any formula? No. So it's a simple cell reference, so we will use the same cell reference here, that is B3. So I will just type B3 here. So what I have done is, first I did it in 3 steps just to understand how my function gets evaluated, just to build up the logic so that it's easy for me to do it in 1 step. And once we have got the whole thing, we can write it in 1 shot. And what it does is something like this. First of all, Excel will solve the inner functions. First, Excel will solve all the inner functions, as we call them, that is the function inside. This is your outer function. What we are looking at here, concatenate, is your main function. This will get executed in the last. Now concatenate has parameters, so we have given these parameters here within the brackets, and inside these parameters there is a function left, and then there is another function left. So how Excel evaluates is, first it will evaluate both the inner functions, that is left E3 comma 1 and left D3 comma 1. The output of these two functions would actually go as input as the first parameter and input as the second parameter to the concatenate function, and this is how it will then work. I will just do one thing, I will just remove the show formulas, and I will just type an equal to here, and see, result is the same. We get same SD-PKG001. I can copy this to the whole set of rows which are there down, and you will see that we get it there. Now the benefit of doing this is you don't have to generate these two columns which are not required, which are not adding any value, besides generating a column which might be of value, but then besides that they don't have any value. But we know from where we have picked up these values, they are not independent values, they have also come out from some other column. So that can be done in 1 step within the function. So we are not generating some additional dummy values, or we are not generating any data which is not adding any value. So what we are doing is we are making sure that the size of the file does not get affected by just this. Now if we delete these columns, besides this column G where we had generated it earlier, nothing gets affected. And now this time, because I have done the function I have written the function inside the function. So what has happened is, even though those columns are not there, that is those two earlier columns, these two functions are independent and they are doing their job within the concatenate function. Now this is a very useful concept which is there in Excel. What recommendation or what suggestion I would humbly submit is, initially just develop your logic for 1 row where you might have to do it in 3 columns, 2 columns, generate the values, and then finally get the thing. The tip is, the final output, the function what you have used in the final output would be the outermost function. Like in this case, concatenate is the function which we have used in the final output. So what we have done is, that is the outermost function. inside concatenate we have taken the functions as per what we had generated earlier. So based on our logic development, so what we do is outermost function will be the last function what generated the value, that generates the value will be the outermost function. Inside the function, wherever we have used input parameters, and to get those input parameters we used a cell reference, and while using that cell reference what we had realized was we had used a function. So instead of using the cell reference, whatever function we had used in that cell reference, we use it in the final function. So I'll just show it to you again, like here in the first case, concatenate G3 H3. So G3 was a left function, H3 was again a left function. It could have been a right, whatever, but it could have been any other function. Now the question comes, where do we apply this? Where do we use it? One most common thing where we use this is when we are talking about if. We will be talking about ifs in future videos, in a future video which will be coming soon, and we will see how this concept works. This concept also works very well, or can be used very well in your VLOOKUP function, where we will see various combinations what we can use within the VLOOKUP function with some other functions and make your VLOOKUP much more robust, much more robust in terms of not worrying about lot of factors what generally happens with the VLOOKUP function. So when we are going to talk about VLOOKUP function in the future video, we will see how this concept is going to be used. So hopefully this video would have helped you in understanding the nesting of functions. If any comments, please comment in the comment box. Subscribe the channel, like the video, and thank you for the time being, and see you soon in the next video.